If you want to talk about how the mighty have fallen, then you need look no further than the Sonic series. Yes, I know, in my reviews of Sonic CD and Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, I have talked about how the series has held up in recent years as opposed to its earlier titles, but when you think about it, it's really kinda sad. These games used to be a beacon of originality and an example of just how to make a game not only well, but fun. Not to mention, they managed to compete with the powerhouse that is Nintendo. Now, many gamers say the downfall of the Sonic games began in 2006 with the release of Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, I personally believe it started a bit earlier. But is there any hope in redeeming this series after many downright dreadful and/or mediocre titles? Well, in late 2011, Sonic Team released this title for the 20th anniversary of the Sonic series, Sonic Generations. So, did this title manage to redeem this once great series? Well, let's hop right in and find out, shall we? This game begins on Sonic's birthday, when he is thrown a surprise party by all of his friends, and proceeds to enjoy the festivities. Festivities which don't last very long due to a massive creature crashing the party and kidnapping all of Sonic's friends. Personally, I wouldn't be opposed to this thing keeping Amy and Tails, but if that happened, this game would be a bit incomplete. So Sonic follows this creature through a time portal and finds something a bit odd. He begins to find stages that he has already cleared from previous adventures, and he also finds that they are lacking color. So as he clears these stages and sets some of his friends free, he then manages to really discover himself. No, seriously, he literally runs into the past version of himself. Once the two Sonics and two Tails meet up, they discover that in order to save their friends, and hopefully stop this time paradox, they must both traverse through each level and of course collect 7 Chaos Emeralds. So, will Sonic succeed in their mission? Well, that's all up to you. Let's talk about gameplay, shall we? As previously mentioned, in each stage you must play as either the 2D or 3D rendition of Sonic. These renditions are split up into Act 1 and 2 and may be played in either order. The classic version of Sonic has you playing through the levels in a 2D style. For those of you who don't know, this means go to the right and don't die. While this game style is fairly familiar, to my surprise they do manage to change things up a bit. The earlier stages all have a vintage feel to them in this mode, probably because they were 2D platformers to begin with, but even the side-scrolling renditions of the later Sonic levels work very well. Speaking of which, let's move on to the other half of the gameplay, with the 3D segments. Now, if you've played any of the recent Sonic titles, then you probably know how these segments work. For the most part, the camera is behind you as you dash through levels, spin jump enemies, and of course, grind down platforms. Naturally, there will be the obvious segments such as running down the face of a skyscraper, and of course outrunning a semi-truck. But like the 2D segments, the classic levels also manage to translate very well to 3D. After you clear 3 stages, challenges will begin to appear above them. One challenge for each stage is required to access the next boss, and each challenge will reward you with points, and occasionally concept art and music. These challenges range from collecting a set amount of rings in a stage, to of course freeing woodland critters. But of course, there are also the classic rival challenges, those being battles versus Metal Sonic, Shadow, and Silver. The points you earn from completing stages and challenges can then be used to purchase perks for use in said stages, ranging from an extra life, to a bounce ability, all the way up to the Supersonic ability. But even aside from these perks, you can also purchase the ability to play through the classic Sonic game for the Sega Genesis. There are 9 stages overall, and completing these should take you around 6 hours in total. Now for the reviewing. First and foremost, these graphics are absolutely beautiful. From the extremely vibrant and colorful Green Hill Zone, to the destruction and chaos that is Crisis City, these stages are all extremely well designed and just gorgeous to look at. Aside from the stages, the characters all look decent enough, and while the graphics won't change, you can very easily tell the difference between the current and retro characters by design alone. The gameplay is also top-notch. Whether playing as current or retro Sonic, the controls are all very responsive, and there are very little learning curves if you haven't played as either rendition in the past. Now moving on to the soundtrack. It's amazing. There are 3 separate tracks for each zone, one for 2D, one for 3D, and an orchestrated track while selecting the level. The classic tracks do return when playing in their respective modes, but even the remixes for playing as the alternate Sonic do a great job in either making the track sound more modern or retro. Speaking of sound, and this is a big one, the voice acting isn't half bad. Oh, don't get me wrong, many of the characters do sound a bit cheesy, but they are nowhere near as grating on my nerves as they were in the Sonic Adventure games. Despite all of the praise I'm currently giving this game, I do have a couple of issues. Firstly, I really would have liked for this game to be longer. Sure, there is a decent amount of replay value due to there being multiple paths to take in each level, not to mention the challenges and online multiplayer, but I wish they would have included more actual stages. Which leads to my next issue. Mind you, this is a fairly small issue as I feel that all of these stages are very well designed, but I would have preferred more stages from the retro Sonic games. But despite these issues, what are my final thoughts on this game? Well, this game may not be perfect, but I can say that it is definitely a step in the right direction for the Sonic franchise. Now, I can't speak for what titles Sonic Team holds for us in the future, but if they can follow this formula in future games, I foresee very good things. So, whether you're hoping to check out a Sonic game for the first time, or planning to fall in love all over again, I can recommend this game to you. So until next time, this is E-Dog. Still a gamer, still a Sonic fan. See you next time.